Hello and welcome. It's Andrew Eborn here again for yet another Lives on Lockdown. Join me after the break when my guest will be the historian, Richard Jones. Here we go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Lives on Lockdown. I'm delighted that yet again I'm joined by the wonderful historian, Richard Jones. How are you, Richard?
I'm not bad. How are you, Andrew?
I am amazing. It's a glorious day here in the centre of London. We've all been set free. We're all staying alert and having a fantastic time. So last time I saw you, you were about to go off and do a presentation to a whole load of people on Facebook about ghosts. Tell me about that.
Well, it turned out they were all ghosts. Oh, you're gone. Well, you've vanished. So, no, I did a presentation about the ghosts of Britain and Ireland, and that was a wonderful experience.
Tell me about the ghosts of England and Ireland. Only England and Ireland, is that right?
Okay. Yeah. Which one would you like from my extensive library?
Oh, what I love is the backdrop. Oh, you've got one. Oh, it's a really.
How about this one?
Oh no, it really is.
Oh, there's this one here as well.
Where have you gone to?
Or I can get you this one here.
Oh, no, you can. Oh, you can do a book test. Okay, look at the third page. Pick a page anywhere at all. Pick a page.
Okay.
Do a little test. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, you got one?
I've got one.
Word. It's a really long word. Has it got an E in it?
No.
Okay, perfect. That's the word. Well done.
Congratulations. It was perfect.
What's that? It was perfect. Thank you. But perfect but it's spelled differently because it's like a cat with a U, and people are making the joke we always make when we talk about cats. It's P-U-R-R-F-E because they couldn't spell C-T. Is that right?
No, it's actually pagan. It's spelled pagan, but it sounds like perfect.
We love it. It's always a joy. So you went on and you spoke about these ghosts and things like that. What did you tell them?
I told them all about the ghosts. Well, first of all, we talked a lot about the Tower of London and the various ghosts that haunt the Tower of London, which, in my opinion, is the most haunted bit of building, certainly in England, possibly in the whole of Britain, because when you think of all the things that have happened there, executions, people who just went in there and never came out and just lived behind some of those horrible walls, people confined to the dungeons. So inevitably, it's got ghosts, and so we. So we talked a lot about Irish ghosts as well. So we talked about the ghosts of Dublin, ghosts of Limerick, and also I took them up. We went virtually up to County Mayo, where I told them my favourite ghost. One ghostly thing that ever happened to me.
And what was that?
I'm not telling you. No, it was when I was writing my book, Haunted Houses of Britain and Ireland.
Haunted Houses of Britain and Ireland. I have, Richard, Haunted Houses of Britain and Ireland, written by Richard Jones. I have a very, very rare unsigned copy.
You do, and unwritten as well.
And the word you're thinking of, Richard Jones, and I can tell you just looking at that book, the word is pagan. Pagan, is that right?
There you go.
Thank you.
It is pagan.
It is pagan, I told you.
You just stopped the video, didn't you? And you started again. You've edited this one. So I went out to County Mayo, to Moor Hall.
Beautiful. I love County Mayo. Fantastic place.
Yeah, and that's where Tom Moore was born. Tom, the Irish poet.
Yes, Sir Tom Moore.
He's around. He gets everywhere. He
was born there, wasn't he?
Who?
He'd have a bit more walking to do if he had to do it all the way around there.
He would if he was born there, and a few centuries as well. We're talking about.
Yeah, the old one. Yeah, no, I know who
the old Tom Moore. Beautiful, lovely poet, but nobody liked him very much. I think it was W.B. Yeats said his face looked like somebody had carved it out of a turnip.
Carved it out of a turnip?
Carved his face out of a turnip. And Oliver St. John Gockety said that he looked like a boiled ghost. That was St. John Gocketty's.
Boiled ghost? But how do you boil a ghost? I know it's probably quite good actually in those days because you used to have sheets, didn't you? And the way that you do your washing, not in the days of detergent, because that's all being used for other purposes.
I still get them when I see ghosts.
Yeah, exactly. So you use that. So looking like a boiled ghost would be actually quite a clean one because they put their sheets on, don't they? So it'd be nice and white and sparkly. That's
That's
quite a
it.
compliment, I would have thought.
Boiled, boiled ghost. I think well, I don't think it was intended as a compliment. I think
Ah,
Gogarty, yeah, nobody. I mean, he's a wonderful poet, but as I say, he was doesn't seem to have been that much liked by his contemporaries. But Moor Hall's lovely. It's in the middle of it. And I was in there, and I'd love to say it was a dark, stormy night, but it was in fact a bright summer's day in August 2004. And I went in there, and it's a ruin. There's nothing there. It's burned down in the early 20th century. And I was up in one of the rooms upstairs, which was complete plaster off the walls, floorboards up. And my biggest fear being I'm going to fall through the floor any minute. And suddenly I heard children laughing in the next room. And I went slowly into the next room, and I went across the room, and I listened, and I looked. And then in the corner, there was a cupboard. So I started moving towards the cupboard, and I slowly opened the door when boom!
I thank your will.
No. I genuinely heard children laughing in one of the rooms.
You did?
And I did, yep. And I came out, I went into the room, and then they were laughing in the room I'd just come out of. And it was like they were playing a game with me. And I couldn't find anybody in there. It was really spooky. And it's the one thing, I mean, I've had lots of things happen, but it's the one thing I can't explain. It was almost cliche. It was like children in a horror, when in the horror films.
In the horror movie, the moment in The Shining when they're cycling down there, all the two twins appear. Yeah. Two twins, of course. There's always two twins.
It was like that.
That is tautology of everyone on a fine morning like this. Yeah, no, interesting. So, but how did you? I mean, you've been working on some great series and things like that. We spoke about Michaela last time. We spoke about Derek last time. Fantastic, iconic moments of British television. And you've been working on all this sort of things. You must have your own theories, your own beliefs, and so on and so forth. That was your one moment where your experience where you couldn't explain what happened. How did that make you feel?
Well, actually, it's one of two moments, but it did make me feel that. I mean, to be honest, I thought there's very, very few records of ghosts actually hurting people. Are you right there? Have you seen a ghost? Is there a ghost behind you?
I was just checking.
It's one of the, you're looking for your sound effects, aren't you? You're looking for sound effects.
Oh, no, I love this. No, we don't want little toys. We'll come on to toys later. Oh, I'll tell you what.
You're looking for your sound effects.
Story, and I'll tell you about a toy afterwards. Go for it.
All right. No, ghosts very rarely hurt people. I mean, to be honest, ghosts. I always think ghosts are great, and ghost stories are fantastic. We all love ghost stories. We grow up with ghost stories. We love telling ghost stories. Nowadays, people like going out and investigating. They go to haunted houses. They go to haunted pubs. And they do all night investigations. So there is a fascination with it. And as I
said, that's really weird. Something strange happened to your sound then, Richard.
It happens every time I talk about ghosts. Have you got me now?
Oh, it sounded as though something was coming through from the other side.
Oh no, that I haven't had breakfast. That was my stomach.
Oh. May the only crunch be in your cornflakes.
Oh dear! Tell them about the honey mummy. That was it, wasn't it? Tell them about the honey mummy.
No, exactly. That was the honey monster. I used to grow up on sugar puffs. I love them. Fantastic. Yep. My favourite breakfast.
Diabetes in a box.
It was wonderful. I tell you what, when I went to boarding school, like, they used to have these massive crates of them, and that's what you used to get. They used to my daily routine. We had lots, like half a pig and a whole case of these honey monsters. Loved it, absolutely. Which is why I'm so slender today. It's always a thrill. But get back to your ghost.
I went to boarding school, and we got porridge for breakfast every morning.
No, but yours were the days of giving me more. Thomas More.
Bone stew for lunch. Bone stew for lunch. None of this half a pig. We probably got the leftovers from your boarding school.
Oh no, I think that's probably right. But yours was quite right too. And you were lucky to get that. Quite frankly, it was always.
Frankly, we were.
We tried to look after you. We tried to look after you.
Well,
But
this
it's
is
also
it, all thrown down to us. Crumbs from the table.
anyway, get back to your ghost. What were you saying about your ghost?
I've forgotten now. What was it?
Oh, well, what a great story. Well, thank you for that. Now, you were telling us, in your wonderful part of Ireland, you had
No, you froze it.
the children, and that was your first experience,
Children.
or one of the experiences, and that was really quite frightening because you couldn't explain it. It was a moment out of The Shining, and you were halfway through telling us about your other experience, and how it affected you.
My other one was in, I think it was Castle up in Scotland, just outside Inverness. And again, that was about 10 this morning. And it's in the middle of a woodland. And I went into this castle, and again, it was a ruin. And there was a staircase going up. And I was standing on the staircase, and I was photographing. I was doing all my photographs for the book. And suddenly, it went very, very cold, ice cold. But it was a warm August day. Then I heard footsteps going up the stairs, and I got this feeling of absolute terror. I can't explain it. It's the first time or the only time I've ever been really frightened. I don't know why. I don't know what caused it. And I just had to leave. I just headed back across the fields, and all the way back, I was convinced I was being followed. I don't know why. I don't know what happened, but there was just something about it. And it's sort of interesting thing about the castle is it's where Duke of Cumberland, stayed on the night before the. I've just forgotten which battle it was, but it was a famous battle anyway. And he stayed there the night before, and it did have a bit of a reputation. But no, as I say, it's a lovely place, lovely castle. But that's it, So the whole point is that it's a fantastic thing to sort of collect ghost stories, talk about things, and of course, ghost stories. They're one of the last things we've got of the oral tradition. I mean, I go all over the country collecting stories. I stay at inns, and I know when I go to the inn, I'll go in, and someone will say, "What are you doing?" And I'll say, "I'm writing a book on ghosts." And I always know this will happen. Someone will say, "I don't believe in ghosts," and then I'll wait for it, and they'll say, "Yeah, but you'll never guess what happened to me once." And then suddenly everyone starts telling ghost stories. What happened to them? What happened? And I think that's fantastic. I can't think of anything else that people can talk about without really getting heated about. You can't do it about politics, you can't do it about sports, but swapping ghost stories, it's great fun.
And people love a great story, don't they? I mean, how far back? I mean, we all know about the ghost in Shakespearean times and so on and so forth, and people seeing a ghost. Even in Chaucer's work, so there are ghosts. How far back do people talk about ghosts? I mean, obviously in Greek, the whole Greek tragedies and so on and so forth, the Romans. How far back in history are we talking before you hear your very, very first ghost story?
Well, the problem is you can't go back and hear it. So but I suppose, storytellers must have always done. There's always been that fascination. We know in ancient times, we can see it from the burial rituals, that they did believe festivals such as the Samhain, which is now Halloween, but the Samhain, as the Celts used to call it. I mean, part of that was the day when the veil between the two worlds became the thinnest, and the dead could cross over and come into our world. So we know from tradition that it was always believed in. It's interesting to note that ghost stories tend to mirror the times. So around about the time of the dissolution of the monasteries, for example, you get a lot of ghost stories. They are vengeful ghosts because the church has taken the land. Sorry, the aristocrats have taken the land from the church, and so there's a curse on the land. So we get sort of vengeful ghosts coming. When there's a murder, there's always talk about the spirit of the murdered victim coming back to get justice and pointing out who the murderer is. Then you get a Shakespearean ghost, perhaps the most famous one being Hamlet's father coming back. And then, of course, you go, the one who references that is Charles Dickens in A Christmas Carol. And Dickens writes A Christmas Carol as a ghost story for Christmas, because Christmas was the time for telling ghost stories. That was the time you sat around the fire, because I think we've got this fallacy. I mean, you always hear it every Christmas where people say, oh, the good old days. We didn't have TV. We didn't have the computer. We didn't have the mobile phone. We had to make our own entertainment. We were happy. Well, to heck were they. Have you ever tried to entertain a family of kids for an entire winter's afternoon when you haven't got a television, a computer? So ghost stories are a fantastic way to do it.
I think you're right. Well, I mean, the answer to that, Richard, is absolutely, that's exactly what people are having to do in lockdown, because they have
Exactly.
they have the children 24/7 now, and the number of families round the piano wishing that somebody could play, it's a wonderful, wonderful moment. It's
And
very good.
it's a virtual piano as well.
Oh yes, absolutely. You can do everything online now, which is good. We had your prediction earlier, and just to prove that this was the topic for today, the word you picked was pagan, and I just want to make sure you've got that over there. That was the prediction that you had earlier. So in the edit, it will look
It
superb.
was.
What was that word? Pagan.
That
Thank
was
you.
brilliant. So it
Brilliant.
was, what was it? Yes, it was, oh yes, exponential. That was.
Oh, that's right. Hang about. I've got to But tell me then, I mean, everybody's been fascinated by ghost stories. When you go to these groups and you advise on these programs and so on and so forth, what is the most common question they ask you?
Do you believe in ghosts?
Okay, that's a typical question. And what would your answer be?
My answer always is and always will be that I believe in something. I believe something's there. I don't know what that something is. I certainly don't believe the dead come back and haunt the living. There was a philosopher from, I think it was the 18th century, but Thomas Hobbes, who emphatically didn't believe in ghosts. And in fact, he made a wonderful observation, actually, which if you think about it is quite a valid observation. He said, why are ghosts always clothed? Where do they get their
Right.
clothing from in life?
And,
And
and what's the answer to that?
well, there isn't one,
No, but
except that
I'll tell you what, the ghosts who come out this weekend would not be clothed. And you know why?
because Saturday is Naturist Day.
That is a lovely segue. We were going to talk about that, weren't we? So that is fantastic. So tell
We
me.
were.
Oh, we were. Fantastic. So tell me about Naturist Day.
In fact, that was my prediction of what you want to speak about. Look, I've written it down.
We love it. The perfect pagan looking pert. It's going to be good. So
That's
yes,
it.
Naturist Day, it sounds fantastic. So where does it
It
take place?
is.
Because we know that they have certain beaches. For example, in Brighton, it famously had a beach, it still does, where you can go off and you can expose yourself to the world and basically with like-minded people, you can enjoy yourself and the freedom that gives you. What's happening this time? Tell me a bit about the
Well,
history of this and also what's happening this weekend.
I've always wanted more exposure, but it's, no, it's. Well, to be honest, I don't know that much about it. I just heard a segment on the radio that Saturday's Naturist Day, and you go to £10 and the shirt stays on.
Well, I'll tell you what we should do is on the show, if anybody is going along this weekend or is an naturist, and they would like to come and talk to us all about how liberating that is and everything else, write to us here at LOL, that's LOL, at octopustv.com, and we will get you on the show. That'll be interesting, won't it?
Clothes? Can we have them clothed though?
It's up to them. I'm sure we can do appropriate camera angles, but it has been so cold over recent days. It's been to have glorious heat. I was up nice and early walking around the park, and it was so cold that the flashes used to come out and just describe themselves.
Boom, boom.
Come on, thank you. We're here all week. It's going to be good. Do write to us. We'd love to hear from you if you're a naturist. Richard Jones, just to finish with then, that was the most...
Can I tell you my favourite story about Donald? Are you ready for this one?
About what?
Donald Sinden.
Oh, Donald Sinden. We
Sir
love Donald Sinden. Of course you can.
I used to love him. I interviewed him in 2009. I went down to his house down in Romney Marsh in Kent. And I spent 2 days with him, talking to him about it. Donald Sinden famously saw the ghost at the Theatre Royal on Haymarket in London. And he came up to London, and it was fantastic. I'd written about the ghost story because it was quite well known that he saw the ghost of Buckstone in the theatre coming down the stairs when he was acting there with Sir John Gielgud. But to actually stand at the spot he saw it, and this was 2009, so just a few years before he died, to stand on the very spot where he saw that ghost. And he told me the whole story. It was wonderful. But he told me this wonderful line, which I think is a great one, about the old play. He told me all the theatrical anecdotes. and he told me about. Do you know the story about the Macbeth theatre directions? And,
Oh, I do, but
the,
carry on.
the
Tell
famous
it
story, which
anyway.
probably isn't a true story, but it's one of those stories that should be true if it isn't true. And it was the theatre direction. Uh,
Run that again.
right upper
It's really
entrance.
weird today. I'll tell you what, the connection maybe, or it might be interference from elsewhere. But every time you're telling one of these ghost stories, there's some sort of interference. And it sounds as though your voice is being distorted. Can you hear me okay? I think you might. I think Gremlins.
I can hear you fine. You're in slow motion though.
Isn't that weird? You start talking about ghosts, and I bet all the people, and this is our challenge, is still there. All the people who have strong beliefs, do let us know in the comments. Come along, and they will explain why there are and have been on a special edition talking about ghosts. Why there have been all of these interferences. Some might put it down to just terrible connection. Everyone trying to connect in
Well, it's spooky. Did you get my story though?
Time. Are you back with us? Earth to
Everyone's
Richard.
connecting at the moment. Are you there?
Yes. Halfway to London.
Earth to Andrew. Richard to Andrew.
Oh, hello. You're back, Richard.
Can you hear me?
There you are. Okay. Can you hear me?
I'm back.
Oh, you are back. Thank goodness for that. Okay, yes, you were saying
that you're
with Donald Sinden, and I have to say, before you carry on, you've done so well to tell a Donald Sinden story without yet doing an impersonation of Donald. But you're there on the spot. This must be the moment. Tell us about it.
I cannot. He was a one-off. He was a wonderful man. But no, his story was, one of his many stories, was about the old... it was for Macbeth, and it was enter Lady Macbeth with candle, right upper entrance, and stage direction. And then she did the act, and the exit was exit Lady Macbeth with candle, left upper entrance. And there you go. So that's my Donald Sinden story.
It's also Richard, it's been a real joy. We will chat again. Anybody who'd like to comment on any of the points, don't forget to subscribe to Octopus TV. Send us your comments in the comments below on YouTube. Also, write in if you'd like to be on the show. If you have views on any of this, write to me at lol at octopustv.com. For now, Richard Jones, historian, thank you for joining us.
Andrew.
It's a joy.
Could I
be good, and we'll see you next time.